I'd like to welcome Dr. Yizhar Hess to Valley Beth Shalom. Dr. Yizhar Hess is the current vice chairman of the World Zionist Organization in Israel. Following his military service, Yizhar earned a BA in political science and Hebrew literature at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. A member of the Israeli Bar, his law degree is from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, IDC. He holds an MA in Jewish Studies from the Schechter Institute in Jerusalem and his PhD in Sociology and Education from Sussex University in Brighton, England. Yizhar has a broad range of experience in Jewish communal service. After holding the deputy director position at the Shorashim Center for Jewish Studies, Yizhar served as the Jewish Agency's community shaliach to Tucson. On his return to Israel, he worked for the Jewish Agency as director of partnerships. Yizhar has professional experience in advertising and journalism. He's a regular contributor to the Israeli press on the subjects of religion and state, and is the co-editor of the book Questions About God, published by Ma'ariv. Between 2007 and 2020, Yizhar served as the executive director of the Masorti movement in Israel, part of the worldwide conservative Masorti movement dedicated to a traditional, egalitarian, and pluralistic vision of Israel and Judaism. Yizhar represented the Masorti movement in the negotiations with the Israeli government regarding egalitarian prayer at the Kotel, and he's one of the leading voices in Israel promoting Jewish pluralism. Yizhar is a member of the executive of the Jewish Agency, the Board of Trustees of Keren HaYesod, and the Board of Governors of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He is the senior representative of Merkaz in the national institutions. He is a 10th generation Yerushalmi, Jerusalemite. He lives today with his family in Modi'in. I am proud that every time I am in Israel, I try to make time to sit down with Yizhar. And I can assure you that if you sit down with him, you will not only be guaranteed good conversation, he has the best office cappuccino machine. No matter which office he has, you're always good for a good cup of coffee. Yizhar, welcome to Valley Beth Shalom. Thank you very much for participating in this educational series as preparation for celebrating Israel's 75th birthday.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be at VBS, and it's wonderful to meet you again, this time via Zoom.
Via Zoom. So 75 years is an incredible accomplishment. I don't know that my grandparents necessarily thought that it was possible when they were walking out of the ashes of Europe. I don't know that your grandparents' grandparents in Jerusalem many years ago would have thought it's possible. And this all began over the summer. We were sitting in your office on Keren HaYesod in the beautiful building with so much history. And you were telling me that each and every year you read the declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel at the egalitarian Kotel. So tell me a little bit about that ceremony and why it's so meaningful.
So soon after I was elected to my position here, and by the way, I need to thank you for helping me. You know, I'm the senior representative of Merkaz. So if you voted for the World Zionist Organization's Congress, you voted for Merkaz, and I represent you here. And I was thinking, how could we put in place the values that we believe in into the fabric of the Zionist movement in a very authentic way? And as you know, one of the achievements of the Masorti movement in Israel, to say it very honestly, one of the achievements, I think, of modern Israel today is the ability of Jews to pray together at the Kotel. The section of the Kotel that is the egalitarian prayer, there is a place that we are so proud of, and we wanted to attach it to Yom HaAtzmaut, to something that is so meaningful for the history of the state. So we took the Declaration of Independence and read it in tropes, the Te'amei Haftara, into the Megillah. And every year between Yom HaShoah to Yom HaZikaron, we gather at the Kotel and we read it in tropes. We divided it to its 12 sections. So we have 12 aliyot, and each one who comes to read represents a different sector in the Jewish people. So we have Reform and Conservative Masorti, and we have Orthodox. This year, hopefully, we'll have even a Haredi representative who would read it there at the egalitarian Kotel. And it represents the ability not only to celebrate this very holy moment, but also to do it in an egalitarian place at the Kotel that symbolizes the fact that we came back to Jerusalem, and also symbolizes the fact that we can all together celebrate this moment. The 10 days between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron are called in Israel Aseret Yemei Todah, the 10 days of thanking. And for me to be able to read it there and to broadcast it with simultaneous translation to the entire Jewish world, it is a custom that I hope that will be a tradition for many, many, many years, even generations. It's the third year that we are doing it here, that we are doing it again. And last year, we had, reading one of the sections, the son of one of the people who signed the Megillah. So it was so moving, so important. And I hope that this year also representatives from Valley Bet Shalom will be joining us via Zoom.
I hope so. I hope so. And, you know, in antiquity, there were the Shalosh Regalim of Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot on which the calendar rested. In modernity, we've also created Shalosh Regalim in a sense. In this Aseret Yemei Todah, we have Yom HaShoah VeHaGvura, and we have 9 days later, we have Yom HaZikaron, and then the next day we have Yom HaAtzmaut. So we have a series of days. Now, the way that this session is going to unfold is that we're going to now talk about the Declaration of Independence, some aspects of it that make it so unique to the Jewish people and to Israel. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about kind of this moment in which we sit. Unlike the United States that began with the Declaration of Independence and then moved into a constitution, Israel has a declaration of the establishment of the state. And even in the declaration, it alludes to the idea that there's going to be a follow-up document, and that document never comes, essentially. And so in so many different ways, Israel is a mixture of different ideas. And so it picks up the declaration, perhaps, of the United States concept, which was an inspiration for Ben-Gurion, and then falls into kind of a British legal system, judicial system, more than an American system. And a lot of that tension we see playing out today and still not fully realizing perhaps how to balance those ideas. Let's begin with the declaration itself, and I turn the floor over to you. I'll jump in and perhaps interrupt a couple of times or do my best to translate, but I will invite you to teach us about the declaration.
Thank you. So first, I want to say something that is not. It wasn't that certain that we will have this wonderful document in front of us today. Israel was back then in the midst of Milchemet HaAtzmaut, in the midst of our war of independence. The most horrifying war that Israel ever had. 1% of the population was killed in that war. 6,000 people out of 600,000 Jews that we had in Israel. So in the midst of it, the leadership of Israel decided, hey, it's important enough for all of us to read and sign and compose this declaration that basically defines the core democratic values of who we are. It's as if it was important enough to stop that moment and to say, before we are launching this venture, it's important for all of us to agree about the protocol, about the rules. So I'm very much looking at this document in a way that brings me sometimes even to tears when I think about this holy text. And it's by reason that I'm calling it a holy text that our entire leadership of the people who lived in Israel, the Yishuv, came together to sign. Now, it's a declaration that tries to give us a narrative of the Jewish history. I would say that not necessarily a very accurate one, but one that brings you a narrative that wants you to remember. We know that David Ben-Gurion was a serious scholar. What we also know that he knew the Tanakh by heart. So for him, it was very important that the Tanakh will give, the Bible will be given the stature that he thought that should be part of what Israel is. What we also know that Ben-Gurion didn't appreciate much the the Jewish thinking or the Jewish writings or everything that was done and developed and was written outside of Israel in the exile, in the diaspora. And therefore it's not by coincidence that the declaration starts with giving lots of credit to what happened in Eretz Israel. And with your permission, Rabbi, I would like to ask you to follow me with reading the first paragraph. I will be reading it in Hebrew first, and then you'll be reading it in English. בארץ ישראל קם העם היהודי, בה עוצבה דמותו הרוחנית, הדתית והמדינית, בה חי חיי קוממיות ממלכתית, בה יצר נכסי תרבות לאומיים וכלל אנושיים, והוריש לעולם כולו את ספר הספרים הנצחי.
The declaration begins, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here, their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here, they first attained to statehood, aspired to statehood, perhaps is a better translation, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of all books. I'm reading, perhaps with a little bit of embellishment or changing the words where I think it's more appropriate, off of the Jewish Virtual Library translation.
So what we see here, that it opens with something that Ben Gurion really wanted us to remember and to cherish. The fact that the history of the Jewish people began here in Eretz Israel. Well, when you analyze the Jewish history or the Hebrew people history, you know that it didn't necessarily start in Eretz Israel. Not only that, some of our assets, some of our cultural assets were not necessarily written and developed only in Eretz Israel. And I'm not talking only about Abraham before he came to Israel, but also about the Talmud, about the Gemara, about what was developed so importantly in our history, not in Eretz Israel, but outside of Israel, where Jews were in Babylon. For Ben Gurion, he really wanted us to remember that what Zionism is coming back to the land of Israel and creating a narrative that is attached directly to the land of the Tanakh, to the land of the Bible. There is in Hebrew it rhymes well, in English doesn't so well, that for Ben Gurion it was from the Tanakh to the Palmach. From the Tanakh to the Palmach is the nickname of one of the undergrounds that we had here in Israel before the establishment of the State of Israel. So for him, he wanted us to remember and to cherish and to celebrate the fact that we are coming back to our heritage in the most profound way, celebrating our independence, something that we used to have back then in Eretz Israel. Ben Gurion was a visionary. Ben Gurion was a practical political leader with a very strong vision and with the ability to impose some of his political ideas in a way that people could work with.
Yizhar, who is viewed as the primary author of the declaration? Because Ben Gurion did not write this himself. His ideas were collected. And this group, the Jewish People Council, that was the group that voted on whether or not to declare independence on the 5th of Iyar, the 14th of May, 1948. For me, this feels very much like Anshe Knesset Hagadol in the Talmud. Like it's an abstract group of people that we never know very much about their meetings or what was discussed. Here we know there was a woman who was part of it by the name of Golda Meirson, who later we learn we come to love as Golda Meir. We know certain of the members, but we don't know everything that went on as part of this group, and we certainly know through Agada, through legend, how close that vote is to hold this ceremony on the 5th of Iyar. That 6-4, they decide after hours and hours of meeting, he convinces people that they have to do this. And then writes in his diary that it's the most complicated decision he's made in his life, because he knew that Jews would die in the war that would ensue for sure immediately following. So who is the author, and how did the decision get made that it be presented like this?
So there were 10 drafts for the declaration. something that has to do with our history, with Masorti conservative Judaism history, is an unknown story about Rabbi Harry Davidovich, Tzvi Davidovich. He was a conservative rabbi who made Aliyah in the 30s. He was a rabbi of few pulpits in North America, served in the army, made Aliyah, and of course he could not live as a conservative rabbi here. He could not make a living here as a conservative rabbi. He was a fine scholar. He was a fine scholar that was known for years for his translations to Shakespeare. He had a PhD from Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a neighbor of the legal advisor of the Histadrut, of the union, the workers' union. And when Ben-Gurion asked the legal advisor of the labor union to help him come with a declaration, that lawyer was a known lawyer, went to his neighbor that he knew that was a fine scholar and asked him, listen, you just came from America, you know something about declarations and independence, could you help me with that? And actually, we can claim rightly that the first draft was written with the assistance of Rabbi Dr. Davidovich, that brought something that is left in the Megillah up until today from the first draft. We'll get to it towards the end of our conversation. But that was the first draft. It went on and on with various drafts. Someone who played a key role in it was Moshe Shertok, that was known for being the prime minister of Israel later on, and for many years was the minister of foreign affairs. It was obvious that it has to have a conversation with other important declarations. If you know the Declaration of Independence of the United States, you could see some things that could relate to it. What you will not find in our Declaration of Independence is the word democracy. Interestingly enough, you need to remember that, of course, the values are there, equality and elections, everything is there, but the word democracy. Back then in the 50s, to use the word democracy was not necessarily what we think today of democracy. Back then, there were some undemocratic countries who used the word democracy. The notion of liberal democracy was not as it is today. I'm sure that if today it was written, that word was there, but all the values of democracy are very much in place. Unfortunately, the Declaration of Independence was never legislated as our constitution. Yet, for many years, when the courts wanted to rely on something that is not part of the Israel legal law, they would go back to the Declaration of Independence and gave it, down the years, in the process, gave it a stature of a semi-constitution. So it was fine to go back to that declaration, although it was never legislated. Unfortunately, a big mistake of Ben-Gurion, huge mistake. He didn't want it to be the constitution. He wanted to be more flexible. A big mistake. If we had the Declaration of Independence today legislated as a constitution, we might avoid the constitutional crisis that Israel is facing these days. We'll get to it. But I would like with you, Rabbi, to go to one of the paragraphs that I'm most proud of in this declaration. The fourth paragraph from the end. מדינת ישראל תהא פתוחה לעלייה יהודית ולקיבוץ גלויות, תשקוד על פיתוח הארץ לטובת כל תושביה, תהא מושתתת על יסודות החירות, הצדק והשלום, לאור חזונם של נביאי ישראל, תקיים שוויון זכויות חברתי ומדיני גמור לכל אזרחיה, בלי הבדל דת, גזע ומין, תבטיח חופש דת, מצפון, לשון, חינוך ותרבות.
The state of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for the ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all of its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations.
That's the core of our Megillat HaAtzmaut. That's the essence of this holy document. It starts with the law of return, basically. It tells you that this is a Jewish state, that every Jew who steps on our door is welcomed and gets citizenship. If Israel had a constitution, I would put the law of return as the number one clause. It's important to know that we are a Jewish state by the very fact that not only that we have a Jewish the flag and the language, but the fact that every Jew has can come to Israel and be a citizen. But the second sentence is not less important. It tells you democratically that after we declare the fact that every Jew has this birthright to come to Israel, the country has the obligation to treat in an equal way to every citizen, regardless of his or her religion. So Medinat Israel will be taking care of this country to the benefit of all of its inhabitants. So it balances well, I think, between Jewish and democratic and Jewish in a very celebratory way. And then it defines the values of this country, the freedom and justice, and our ongoing desire to have peace with our neighbors. And it gives kudos to the prophets of Israel, who always talked about the justice and equality, and it closes it quite well. And then it opens with the obligation, again, second time, the obligation to give equal rights to every citizen, regardless of his or her religion, tribe, sex. We didn't have gender back then. So it's katuv min. Today, it would have been gender. But the fact that we are committing to such very strong liberal democratic values is something to remember. And then it touches things that, well, I'm not necessarily that we were able to live up to. We promise freedom of religion and conscience and education and culture. When it comes to freedom of religion in Israel, at least when it comes to the freedom of religion of Jews, I think we have still a process to work on. Rabbi, we are very proud of the state of Israel, but we are not proud of some aspects of its legal system. The fact that you, as a rabbi, cannot perform a wedding here in Israel, the fact that the different streams of Judaism cannot celebrate equal rights in Israel, this is definitely a stain on our democratic structure. In some ways, I would even say that Israel is the only democratic state where Jews do not have freedom of religion, the only Western country where Jews cannot celebrate freely their freedom of religion is the state of Israel. And it's in spite of what's written here, but still, this is something that we should thrive to. It's not a completed process that we are working on. And then, of course, it promises that we will protect all the holy sites in Israel of all religions. This is the core of our Megillat HaAtzmaut. It puts to the legislators of back then and of today a set of values that we need to aspire to implement. As much as each democracy has its faults. I know that Israel is not far from being perfect. The United States is far from being perfect. This is the reality that we live in. I think that I can only imagine what would have happened if back then in 1948, Ben-Gurion would put his strength in order to legislate it as a constitution. There was an attempt in the first year to find common ground for constitutions. You read today the different proposals of different thinkers and politicians, and each one of them, really, if it would have been implemented today, we had a better Israel. It didn't happen. You need to remember, therefore, that sometimes political maneuvers do not lead to good solutions, even though there is a compromise that people feel that they can live with. It was a big mistake. And, maybe today in a few moments when we'll talk about the current crisis, we will elaborate more about that. I would like, though, Rabbi, to go back to the Megillah, to the text, to the very last paragraph. מתוך ביטחון בצור ישראל, הננו חתומים בחתימת ידינו.
In the Hebrew, it should literally be translated as placing our trust in the rock of Israel. But in every English translation, it says placing our trust in the Almighty. We affix our signatures to this proclamation at this session of the Provisional Council of State on the soil of our homeland in the city of Tel Aviv on this Sabbath Eve, the 5th day of ER 5708, May 14th, 1948. And they had to sign it and get out of there quickly before Shabbat came in. Right. It happened all in the Art Museum. Today you can visit it. It's called Independence Hall on Rothschild Boulevard. And it's one of the not necessarily one of the most impressive buildings in Israel, but a building in which one of the most impressive things occurred in the entire state.
Indeed. By the way, you cannot visit it for the last 2 years. It's closed. It will take another year at least to finish the renovation, but it will be a state-of-the-art renovation of this place, as it should be. They dig 2 stories. It would be a museum that everyone should visit when it's open. But what is the Rock of Israel? How come the Rock of Israel came into this text? So rightly, the people who translated it thought that the Rock of Israel is, a metaphoric way to talk about God. But explicitly, it's written there, the Rock of Israel. And this is something that we need to pay respect to our beloved conservative rabbi that we started with, Rabbi Lebovitz. He knew that there is a political dispute in the Yishuv. Most of the people who signed the Megillah were determined, sophisticated, knowledgeable, and determined Chilonim, secular people that were part of the Aliyah Shniyah, that came to Israel out of passion for Judaism in its socialistic, atheistic way that Ben Gurion was sharing with the world. And for them, having God as part of the Megillah was a big no-no. Ma pitom. We came here, and Zionism came to fight Jewish history in a creative way that is a secular way, not a religious one. That was their belief. On the second hand, Ben Gurion knew, and everyone knew, that in order to create a consensus, you need to bring also the Orthodox sectors of Zionism to come and to sign this Megillah. Rabbi Lebovitz came with this brilliant idea to have a few words that could be translated in more than one way. So in a secular reading, Tzur Israel is the Rock of Israel. In a religious reading, Tzur Israel, it's God. And it's like a gem that he left for us in this Megillah, A, to remember the fact that in the Hebrew language, there are more than one way to describe a phenomena, and B, to bring us a sign that sometimes in order to create consensus, you need to be as creative as possible. Everyone knew that it speaks differently to different populations, and they came into conclusion that this is something that everyone could live with. Not everyone who is signed on the Megillah that day. Jerusalem was under curfew, be'otzer. People could not come to Tel Aviv, so they left some places for some others to add their signature later on, and it became the document that we should celebrate today.
Tzur Yisrael could only be the product of somebody who is both familiar with our Siddur, knows the prayer book very well, and also has a familiarity with poetry.
Right.
Because he knew that writing Tzur Yisrael Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, right, that the Rock of Israel rise up and be a help to Israel, that would pull at the heartstrings of Jews who daven. We would read that one way, and Jews who are secular and Zionistic and didn't want that kind of language, God language, involved directly into the declaration. They would read it as a coming back to the land itself, and the land actually being as much of a protector for us as we're a protector for it. And so it's one of the most beautiful additions, and it makes it so much so a unique document written by the Jewish people for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the moments following the declaration, right? The day is chosen not only because it's May 14th and the British mandate is going to end on the 15th. It's going to expire on the 15th. So on the 15th, all hell is about to break loose, all chaos. There's going to be no imperial force, essentially, to ensure order. So whatever decision has to be made by the Jewish people is made according to us, rather than forced upon us sometime after the 15th. It's in a very proactive way. The other thing that happens is that Ben-Gurion, who's not, if you study him, I don't think he's one of the great compromisers of our time, of his time. He plans it on a day and a time when he knows that Begin and other people are not going to be present, right? They're not around. So the declaration is made, and then we don't know yet that we're going to pivot into a parliamentary system as a people, right? The parliamentary system is almost the result of a not being able to compromise as well, because they can't figure out how to share power and how to so they decide that everybody just will have seats in the government, as opposed to, like you said, battling out a political resolution from the outset. Israel decides to, I guess the analogy is kind of remain half pregnant in so many different ways, right? Because very practical decisions had to be made in real time at the very beginning, so that the state could actually be established. And Ben-Gurion, to his credit, was willing to make a lot of hard decisions, and yet he was also not a forgiving person.
This is true. The kind of risk that he took with declaring the state of Israel, in spite of some of his top allies politically that were against it, was a risk that you had to be a leader like Ben-Gurion to take. There is a legend, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it's a nice legend, that he locked Moshe Sharet in an office because he knew that if Moshe Sharet would come to the meeting, he will be against the declaration. So he literally locked him in order to make sure that he'll have the majority. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it gives you the sense of the moment, declaring statehood in spite of what the world wanted to see there, and in spite of the fact that we were in the midst of a war that no one knew that we will be able to win. This is a decision that no one should envy. We're happy that he did it. It minimizes the list of mistakes that he did as a leader. And he did quite a few, but the fact that he gave us the state on that day, it's something that put him, along other things, as one of the two big dreamers and implementers of Zionism. It's Herzl and Ben-Gurion. And all the rest may be very, very important, but none of them is at the level of Herzl and Ben-Gurion. They never met each other. Ben-Gurion was alive when Herzl was alive, but they never met each other, but we owe them too much.
And I would say that according to, and I would think that Ben-Gurion would also want this comparison. When you start in the Torah with Avram Avinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, whoever you're talking about, the incredible nature of our narrative is that we read stories about human beings who are incredibly wise and also incredibly human. And Ben-Gurion, just like all of those leaders, was incredibly wise and incredibly human. And so, you can read about him as perhaps the greatest Jewish leader of a generation. You can also read about the flaws that kind of still haunt us in a certain way, because no prophet saw everything in every direction, and there were challenges waiting for us that were not foreseen in May 1948. And now we're going to pivot. We're going to pivot to today. This is a little bit of a complicated conversation, right? Because we have people in Israel on both sides, and we just had a wonderful program here in Los Angeles that was put on by the Jewish Journal and the Tikva Fund, where they brought in legal scholars from Israel in favor of the judicial reforms and against the judicial reforms. I actually think one of them was the member of the Knesset, the architect of the judicial reforms. And they both used actually the same examples of failure and the same examples of success, and interpreted them completely different. And they both talked about the lack of a constitution, and both talked about how Israel right now is caught between a check and balance conversation, and the real question is who should have an ultimate, let's say, ability to balance or check on the system. Should it be the judicial branch? Should it be the legislative branch? In the United States, in theory, we have three branches of government that all have checks and balances on each other, and we know that system does not work out perfectly for us all the time. So you've actually been an outspoken opponent of the judicial reforms. We've spoken about it ourselves, and you've expressed real consternation about the dangers of these judicial reforms. And I think it should be said also, it's not just the judicial reforms, which was brought up during this other program. It's the judicial reforms at this moment by this government that seem to be not what people want, not the desire after a razor-thin election that produced a kind of out-of-balance coalition. And if I'm mischaracterizing any of this, these are conversations you and I have had. So,
Rabbi, you are very knowledgeable about the Israeli society, so I'm not surprised that you analyzed it very accurately.
So explain to us now in your words, why should American Jews, well, first of all, what are the dangers of the judicial reforms? What are the benefits? Why is it even on the table? Why have previous governments considered judicial reforms, perhaps not in this way and not to this extent? What is wrong with the judicial system, or what is broken? What needs fixing? And why should American Jews care?
Yeah. So, major questions. I'd like to start with this government, okay? Because when we were waiting to see what kind of decisions this government will take, we didn't think that it will be the judicial reform because it wasn't part of the campaign before the elections. Okay, we were surprised on that, and definitely by the level of things that they want to change. But let's start with the government. We just had an elections a few months ago, not that long ago. The government was convened about 2 months ago, and for many of us, it was not easy to digest the fact that today, in our government, we have ministers that just a few months ago were out of the legitimate discourse. So far to the right, people who celebrated things that in our history, it's a big shame. If Itamar Ben-Gvir could be a minister, someone who's Baruch Goldstein, the assassination, the killer, Baruch Goldstein, his picture is in his living room, and someone who is proud of being racist, someone who is Jewish supremacy ideology, brought him to the Knesset. To give him the portfolio of the Homeland Security is something that was, for many Israelis, and a shame on their Zionistic beliefs.
And as a teenager, his ideology was so, let's say, profoundly out of step with society that the IDF would not accept him into service. So this is not. So all I'm trying to explain is that this isn't a liberal portrayal of Ben-Gvir. The IDF. It is a kind of objective body in Israel, the Israel Defense Force. Everyone gets drafted into the Israel Defense Force. For them to look at somebody and say, "We don't want you as part because we can't trust your behavior," is a statement that people should pay attention. A warning people should heed.
He was taken to court more than 50 times. He was convicted 8 times in felonies connected to terror. Okay, we are talking about something that is, that brings into question the reasoning of our prime minister to appoint such ministers. But okay, we thought it's absurd. We will never meet that guy. But okay, it happens. And then over and above it came the coalition agreements. We read the coalition agreements and we saw that some of them are so dramatically aiming to change the nature of Israel as an open society, as a liberal democracy that could share views and ideas in an open way. But none of us, and I'm talking now about really none of us, suspected that the big thing is just to be seen, and this judicial reform came in a way that stunned many of us, but also because we didn't expect it to happen. Now it has.
I have to take you back for 1 second just to explain for our congregation, for people who are not aware. So the Knesset is made up of 120 seats. You need 61 people to agree to be a coalition in order to have a ruling coalition. In that 61, that Bibi sits as the prime minister of that coalition today. He then, as a Likud member, has to sign an agreement with each of the different parties to bring them in. And in each of these different agreements, if you read them as outsiders, you get a taste of what the conversations have been behind closed doors that he promises to them. You see the beginnings, the seeds of what it is that they want from him, and you see the beginnings of an agenda. And in none of those, in none of those agreements, to the best of my knowledge, or this is what you're saying, did this level of judicial reform come to light. That's why this is. It's not that judicial reform is surprising to people. It's that this group of people wanting to this extent of judicial reform and this control over judicial reform is shocking after reading all of the documents that they signed on to.
Yeah. Now, it's not that we are claiming that it's not a legitimate government. They won a majority in the Knesset. But we also need to remember that democracy is not only about the majority, it's also about the minority rights. And without checks and balances, something is profoundly wrong in a way that makes the decision to change the rules of the games at this stage as unlegit behavior democratically. Now, they want to change some of the core elements of who we are. But firstly, let's talk about checks and balances. I know that your checks and balances with the 3 agencies is not perfect, but in Israel, we do not have to begin with 2 agencies. Because of what you described, it's obvious that the government and the parliament are one, meaning the government could do whatever they want via the coalition in the parliament. So we had, for many, many years, only 2 agencies. Okay, so we have the court and we have the parliament / the government. Now, if there is a dispute, who would analyze and decide what's the dispute about, or if it's legal or not, if not the court? If you delete the ability of the court to interpret the law, and if you delete the ability of the law to decide that this law is not legal, you are collapsing the stage that the society and the democratic system is working on. And from 1992, the judicial system gave the court the ability to cancel laws. And the laws that were canceled from 1992 up until today are only 22. So in these few good decades, almost 30 years, the court had this ability. They didn't do it except of 22 times. You compare it to other democracies that has the same systems, and you see that it's way, way more aggressive. So our Supreme Court was very gentle and very respective of the parliament. Now they want to change it in few dimensions. Firstly, to have a supremacy of the parliament that would allow the parliament, the Knesset, to legislate a law that the court will not be able to touch or to cancel or to challenge. And if indeed the court wants to do it, the parliament could re-legislate it. So in a way, it brings the minority rights, if they are hurt by this law, we have no more avenues to go to. Now, when it comes to us, it's big drama. So many times we got our rights from the court, and I'm talking now about non-Orthodox Jews. The recognition of Reform and conservative Masorti conversions were done by the court. Our ability to get some funding from the system, some funding, okay, what came from the court didn't come from the government. And I'm not talking now on my small section of non-Orthodox Jews, but there are many other minorities in Israel that owe their ability to breathe in Israel in an equal way to the defend that they got from the court. They had their day in court. Now, when we are giving a small minority that is now governing this government, the Haredim and the Hardalim, the ability to dictate what the Jewish nature of this country is, we are basically saying to the minorities that their day in court will not be given anymore. Now, this is about the supremacy of the parliament to decide or to override what the court wants. There are other elements in this judicial reform that are not less important. The way that judges will be appointed. Now we have a committee that appoints judges that has a balance between different agencies, the bar and the parliament and the judges, and it created a very strong and vivid and sophisticated Supreme Court that for years Israel was very proud of. Now, what they are now suggesting is to give the coalition the ability to appoint the judges. It would mean that within a few years, we will have the judges reporting back, or the judges owing their election to the prime minister or to the coalition. It would not only change the nature of the court, it would also harm the ability of Israel to claim that we have an independent court that has enough strength to defend and to judge in an open way, in a democratic way. It might jeopardize our ability of Israel not to be taken to the criminal law in Hague. Up until now, our officers were not taken to the criminal European court because it was obvious that we have a strong court in Israel. If it changes, it might go back to us quite quickly. The third element,
in the worst case scenario of when we were going through the constitutional conventions in the United States, without the checks and balances, I forget which thinker said this, said that we could have a tyranny of the democracy.
Right.
Right.
I think it's Montesquieu, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But it in the worst case scenario of these judicial reforms, what happens is that we have a very polarized, partisan court. Every time there's a new Knesset, the new Knesset comes up with a new slate of judges that get installed along with the people that so you're not only voting for Knesset members, but then the repercussion of who you're voting for in the Knesset coalition is that the entire legal system gets overturned. And right now, if people don't understand the context, Israel has gone through how many elections in the last several years?
5.
5 elections in the last several years. The one stable part of the country and the society, the predictable part, has been the court system. Whether you like the decisions or not, and I'm saying this, and there have been, and both of the legal scholars that I heard talk about it, both talked about the courts overturning of the mandate that Haredim needed to be drafted into the IDF as a major mistake. So they both acknowledge that there have been missteps in the last few years that they both disagree with fundamentally. But were you to gut the most stable, sophisticated aspect of the society, because in this moment the society is so imbalanced, or perhaps so perfectly balanced in a partisan way, it feels like what we're doing is we're actually leading to a less stable statehood. Is that?
Indeed, you're 100% right. I'm not claiming that the court system is perfect, and of course there are mistakes. But you cannot compare the things that needs to be fixed to the huge wave of dismantling everything that this judicial reform brings to the table. It's not a judicial reform, it's a regime change, no, not less than a regime change. It's not by coincidence that so many Israelis are, for the last 6 weeks now, are gathering in the streets. Yesterday, I was in the Kaplan Street in Tel Aviv. We were there, about 200,000 people. There were more than almost 500,000 all over Israel in different places together. The people of Israel carrying the Israeli flag, okay, from many walks of life, it's not one sector of the population, are crying out loud that this reform cannot be legislated. Because if, God forbid, this reform legislated, it means, and I'll speak bluntly and quite forcefully now, it would mean that our ability to claim that Israel is a Jewish democratic state, a democratic and Jewish state, בדיבור אחד, יהודית ודמוקרטית בדיבור אחד, is no longer in place, because we know that democracy is not only majority ruling. It cannot be the tyranny of the majority. And if, God forbid, Israel ceased to be a democracy, it would mean that the whole endeavor of Zionism was not worth it, because one can live in a democratic state that is not Jewish. One cannot live in a Jewish state that is not a democracy. This is simply not an option. And it would mean that this wonderful dream of Zionism is collapsing. And what we will see, that people will not be able to associate anymore with something that so many people died for and inspired. And even when I'm saying it, it's hard to me even to finish a sentence, right, because it's so bothering. I wake up at 2 a.m. I look to my side, I see my wife. We are both awake and we think about the same thing. We think, right, how can we stop it? This is something that would change our ability to be proud of our country. Good God.
So I guess I stop right before then, in the sense that when we have conversations like this, when I speak to my friends in Israel and they express that, I don't know that I'm ready to press the eject button if this gets passed in some form or not form, because in 6 months we could have a different government that then just puts it back, or a liberal side that institutes its own judicial reforms. Is there a way to look at this where basically the whole world right now is on a roller coaster in so many ways? And this country too. We're in a political roller coaster, a social roller coaster. We stand on ground without solid footing. It feels like, in so many ways, and we're trying to all figure out, how do we move forward? How do we move forward with technology? How do we move forward with politics? How do we move forward with, the United States? Where we're in a war that's not a war. With Russia, we're in a war that's not a war with China. We're shooting down things. It feels like the news, it's very uneven for everybody. Is it possible that this is Israel's manifestation of the unevenness at the moment, and God willing, like your election feels to me very much like a reflection of the election, the populist uprising that occurred here in this country a few years ago. And it feels like it happened in the United States, and it happened in England, and it happened in Hungary, and it happened in Italy, and then finally it happened in Israel. And all of these countries eventually, reach equilibrium and come out of it.
Not all.
That's true. Not all. You're right.
Turkey didn't. Poland didn't. Hungary didn't.
Yeah, Hungary did not. You're right. Turkey and Hungary are good examples that did not. You're 100% right.
And Poland. And you're right. Hopefully, we will be talking in 6 months, Rabbi, and I will say, good God, we were that close to be Poland and Hungary. Okay. I hope. I'm working my guts with my entire family and friends and everyone and our movement to see that we are fixing it. It would need a very strong activist kind of wave in the Israeli society in order to make sure that we will not get there. And on that, I must tell you, you have a role too, in my eyes, in my opinion. Okay, I think that one of the things that we were always proud of is the fact that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. Israel belongs not only to me as an Israeli citizen who votes to the Knesset, but also to you, Jews who live outside of Israel and care for Israel. This is the meaning of Chok HaShvut, of the no return, and this is also the meaning of calling ourselves in each and every negotiation that we had ever with our enemies, okay? When we sat to the table, we need you to acknowledge the fact that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. Now, what does it mean? It means that you have a stake in this game as well. So when I'm talking with Jews around the world who care for Israel and we are proud of Israel, to say, listen, you need to raise your voice now, it is something that is as legit as anything else. So we need Jews who live outside of Israel to raise their voices and to talk to other Israelis, to write emails and letters to other Israelis here that they can relate to our elected politicians and to others, as well as, and this is something that I don't say lightly, okay, as well as talking with politicians from your side who care for Israel, okay, that for them to find ways to use their ties in Israel to make sure that this sound is heard. Because if it changes Israel in such a profound way, we do not have another Jewish state to rely on. Okay, we need to make sure that Israel is strong, and if Israel is not a democracy, it will weaken itself in a rapid way. And I'd like to be optimistic, and I'd like to hope that we won't be Hungary or Poland or Turkey, right. But in order to be there, we need to be as strong as possible now.
So in the United States, Bibi is much more popular with American Jews than he is with Israeli Jews, even in terms of if he gathered approximately, let's say, a quarter of the Knesset, approximately, let's just, right? Am I right? So he gathered 25% of the votes is what he earned in the country. Here, he's a known entity that American Jews like listening to because he's a very powerful speaker, and he speaks in a parlance that American Jews understand. And he comes here and he represents Israel as we see, with incredible dignity. And from Israel's perspective, part of the criticism of this judicial reform is that it's incredibly self-serving at this moment. It's incredibly self-serving for his personal agenda of staying out of a courtroom himself, which is highly problematic and should have been something that he, recused himself from this process, possibly even the election, but let's just say at least a judicial reform process that directly benefits him.
You hear recordings of Bibi, right, of 5, 6, 10 years ago, and he speaks what I spoke. He right. speaks right. about a strong and independent court system, that he will never touch it, that is one of the jewels in the crown. And you cannot believe it. How come? He changed 180 degrees to something that would kill that system that he defended so proudly. Right. So definitely when someone is accused, and not only accused, when someone is in trial, if he wants to select his judges, right. It tells you something about his ability to be the same dignified leader that some people like so much. And I know he speaks English well, he knows he is probably one of the most sophisticated politicians of our era. And I'm talking now about the last 30 years in the entire stage of politics in the world. Okay, he is that kind of a talent. But even a very talented politician gets to a point where one should acknowledge the fact that he is harmful for our future. And I have nothing personally against him, and I see how talented he is, and some of the things that he did for Israel are definitely worth defending. But boy, he brings us now to a point where it's hard to defend his judgment.
So let's end on a positive note.
Sure.
Okay. You're a 10th generation Jerusalemite. That means that you, many generations ago, your family came from where to Jerusalem?
Well, from Europe, probably Poland.
From Poland.
That's my mother's side. From the other side, Germany. So it's 10 generations from my mother's side. And by the way, I just discovered a few months ago, I am a descendant of Rashi. I'm the 28th generation from Rashi. We have the direct line. So I didn't know that I'm French, but now I'm also French.
I could tell you're French by the red glasses. Yeah, for sure you're French. So let me when your grandmother showed up from Poland, your ancestor from your grandmother's side from Poland.
Yeah.
Was that the 18th century or whenever it was, 1700s? What do you think they would have said at this moment as we approach the 75th anniversary of Israel's statehood? We wish her 75 years of mazel, and we wish her, an eternity more of statehood and success and prosperity. But it wasn't easy when they showed up. It wasn't. They didn't show up at Ben Gurion Airport, and they moved to Jerusalem, which was always been the epicenter of the tension in that entire land. Has always centered in that piece of property, and it took people exactly like your ancestors to sit down and say, "We belong here. We've been dreaming about it. We daven about it. We belong here. We're not going anywhere." What do you think they would say at Yom Ha'atzmaut this year?
So, I'm thinking about my family. They were Haredim. My great-grandfather was a melamed in the cheder. Okay, he's a mocher sfurim. He sold books, and he was a melamed in a cheder, in a small cheder in Mea Shearim. And for many years now, I'm involved in the tensions, in the arguments, sometimes in the battles of state and religion. But you know what? I never, ever hated the people who fought against me. Even when I got spit, sometimes, many times yelled, sometimes. Because I thought, hey, they look exactly like my great-grandfather, okay? And one cannot hate his great-grandfather. I think that if my ancestor were alive today, they would have saw the state of Israel. I'd like to believe that they would enjoy the plurality of the Israeli society. And I think that one of the assets of who we are is the fact that at the end of the day, when you stop arguing about something, you call each other very genuinely, Achi, my brother. Even if you just yelled at him a moment before, it feels natural to you to call him Achi afterwards. And this is one of the assets that I think could be the right bridge for our society for generations to come. I'd like to hope that the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel this year would be a celebration that would allow us to get to the year 100 as a thriving democracy, and that we will lose this existential crisis that we are facing, this crisis of legislation, in a way that would strengthen us, and we will celebrate together the strength of the State of Israel. Michai l'chai and mikoach lekoach.
I want to thank you for joining me here at VBS. We're planning a trip for families at the end of July, beginning of August. I hope that we get a chance to see you there. And I don't know whether VBS understands yet, but I sit on the executive committee of Merkaz, the national movement, the political arm of the conservative movement that will seat delegates at the World Zionist Congress. And the reason we do it, and the reason we vote, and we want to turn out more and more people to vote and support Merkaz, is so that we can seat people like you in positions that can actually make a difference. And Yizhar, thank you for representing us so well. And I look forward to speaking with you next time.